Stop walking and put your hands where I can see them. You don't belong on this street.
This is my neighborhood, officer. If you think I broke the law, tell me exactly what I did.
Save your excuses. Nobody believes a story like yours, and I'm done pretending you belong anywhere near these homes.
I'm cooperating with you. I'm only asking you to explain why you're arresting me.
David! You can explain yourself at the station after I put these cuffs on you.
The officer jerked her hands behind her back and snapped the cuffs shut, while she never resisted. Neighbors gathered along the sidewalk, silently watching as the humiliation unfolded. She stayed calm, never raising her voice or pulling away despite every insult thrown at her. The officer had no idea the woman he was arresting was the chief's wife, and his career was seconds away from colliding with the worst mistake of his life. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The morning sun cast long shadows across Magnolia Row as Dr. Naomi Ellison rounded the corner onto her street. Her breathing was steady and controlled, the rhythm of someone who had trained her body to endure. Sweat beaded on her dark skin, but her pace never faltered. The familiar sight of manicured lawns and pristine driveways should have been comforting. This was her neighborhood, her home. She slowed to a walk as she approached the final stretch, letting her heart rate settle. The emergency response classes she taught at the community center had prepared her for many things, but nothing beat a good morning run to clear her mind. Today's lesson plan needed work, and she mentally reviewed the first aid techniques she would demonstrate. The sound of tires rolling slowly on asphalt made her glance over her shoulder. A white patrol car crept along the street, matching her walking pace. The engine hummed low, deliberate. Naomi kept her eyes forward but tracked the vehicle in her peripheral vision. Years of military training had taught her to notice when something felt wrong. The patrol car pulled up beside her and stopped. The window rolled down with a mechanical whir. "Excuse me, miss." The voice was flat, professional, but carried an edge that made Naomi's shoulders tense. "Can I ask what you're doing wandering around this neighborhood?" Naomi stopped walking and turned toward the car. The officer behind the wheel was white, maybe late 30s, with short-cropped hair and pale blue eyes that looked her up and down like she was an equation that didn't add up. His name tag read Voss in block letters. "I live here," Naomi said, her voice calm and clear. "I was finishing my morning run." Officer Voss stepped out of the patrol car. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with the kind of confidence that came from years of people stepping aside when he approached. His uniform was crisp, his boots polished. Everything about him screamed authority. "You live here?" Voss repeated, his tone suggesting he found that hard to believe. "Which house?" Naomi gestured down the street. "The blue colonial with the white trim. 3 houses from here." From across the street, Naomi caught movement on a porch. Evelyn Marrow stood in her doorway, wearing an expensive silk robe and holding what looked like a phone. The older woman's silver hair was perfectly styled even at this early hour, and her sharp eyes missed nothing. She raised the phone, and Naomi realized she was recording. Voss noticed her attention shift and glanced toward Evelyn's porch. The older woman gave him a small wave, like they were old friends. When Voss looked back at Naomi, his expression had hardened. "We've had complaints about suspicious people in this area," Voss said. "People checking doors, looking for opportunities. You fit the description." Naomi's pulse quickened, but her voice remained steady. "What description would that be, officer?" Voss's hand moved to rest on his belt, just inches from his service weapon. The gesture wasn't accidental. Naomi's eyes tracked the movement, noting the position of his fingers, the angle of his body. Her military training kicked in automatically, cataloging details. Badge number 4127, patrol car number 318, body cam positioned on his left shoulder, red light blinking. "I'm going to need to see some identification," Voss said. "My ID is in my house," Naomi replied. "Like I said, I live right there, 3 houses down." "That's convenient." Voss took a step closer, invading her personal space. No ID, no way to verify who you are or why you're really here. Naomi could smell his cologne mixed with the metallic scent of his equipment. She kept her hands visible, her posture non-threatening, but her mind was racing. This felt wrong. Everything about this encounter felt deliberate, planned. Officer, I understand you're doing your job, but I haven't done anything wrong. I was exercising in my own neighborhood. Exercising? Voss's laugh was cold. Is that what you call casing houses? We've had reports of someone matching your description, checking doors, testing locks. That's not what I was doing. Then you won't mind if I verify that? Voss gestured toward her house. Show me which one is yours. Naomi pointed toward the blue colonial. That one? With the black mailbox and the rose bushes. But when she started to move in that direction, Voss stepped directly into her path. His boots scraped against the concrete as he positioned himself between Naomi and her home, blocking the sidewalk entirely. Hold on there, Voss said, his voice sharp as broken glass. I didn't say you could move. Naomi froze mid-step. The concrete beneath her feet felt solid, but everything else seemed to shift around her. The morning air that had been refreshing moments before now pressed against her skin like a warning. Put your hands where I can see them, Voss ordered, his voice louder now. Palms up, away from your body. Naomi raised her hands slowly, deliberately. Her palms faced forward, fingers spread wide. She had done nothing wrong, but she knew that didn't matter anymore. This officer had already decided who she was and what she represented. Officer, I'm not resisting, Naomi said, keeping her voice level. I'm cooperating completely. You'll cooperate when I say you're cooperating. Voss stepped closer, close enough that she could see the stubble on his jaw, the way his eyes narrowed when he looked at her. You're acting nervous, evasive. People who belong here don't act like that. From across the street, Evelyn Marrow's heels clicked against her porch steps as she walked closer. The older woman moved with purpose, her silk robe flowing behind her like she was making a grand entrance. Her phone remained raised, camera pointed directly at the confrontation. Officer Voss? Evelyn called out, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. I'm so glad you responded so quickly. Voss glanced toward her, but kept his attention focused on Naomi. What can you tell me, Mrs. Marrow? Evelyn stopped at the edge of her lawn, close enough to be part of the conversation but far enough away to maintain her position of power. I saw her looking into windows, checking to see if anyone was home. She was definitely casing the Morrison house 2 doors down. Naomi's chest tightened. The accusation was a complete lie. She had been running, nothing more. But Evelyn spoke with such confidence, such certainty, that anyone listening would believe her. I was not looking into windows, Naomi said firmly. I was running on the sidewalk. That's what they all say, Voss replied. His hand moved back to his belt, this time resting on his handcuffs. Funny how Mrs. Marrow saw something different. Around them, the neighborhood was waking up. Curtains twitched in windows. A man in a bathrobe stepped onto his porch, coffee mug in hand. A woman walked out to retrieve her newspaper but stopped halfway down her driveway, staring. None of them moved to help. None of them spoke up. They just watched. Naomi could feel their eyes on her, judging her, accepting whatever narrative was being built around her on this quiet suburban street. She had lived here for 3 years. Some of these people had waved to her before, smiled when she walked past. Now they looked at her like she was a stranger, like she was exactly what Voss thought she was. Turn around, Voss commanded, hands behind your back. Officer, please, Naomi said. I haven't committed any crime. Obstruction of justice, suspicious behavior, trespassing. Voss grabbed her wrist before she could respond, his grip tight enough to cut off circulation. Maybe breaking and entering, depending on what we find when we search you. The pain shot up her arm as he twisted it behind her back. Naomi bit down hard to keep from crying out, tasting copper in her mouth. Her shoulder joint strained against the unnatural position as Voss forced her other arm to match. The handcuffs clicked into place with metallic finality. They were too tight, cutting into her wrists. But Naomi knew better than to complain. Any reaction would be seen as resistance. Any word would be used against her. Before Voss could take her phone, Naomi's thumb found the emergency button on her screen. The neighborhood safety app she had helped design activated with a single touch. The alert went out instantly. A live notification with her location, a photo, and an audio stream that would reach Malcolm, Judge Helena Frost, Lieutenant Dana Reeves from Internal Affairs, and a dozen other trusted contacts. Voss snatched the phone from her hand seconds later, but it was already too late. The system was active. "Well, well," he said, examining her phone. "Let's see who you were trying to call." Naomi stood cuffed beside the patrol car, the metal cutting into her skin with each small movement. Across the street, Evelyn Marrow lowered her phone and smiled. The expression was cold, satisfied, like she had just won a game Naomi hadn't known they were playing. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across Magnolia Row as neighbors continued to gather and watch. The black SUV appeared at the end of Magnolia Row like a shadow cutting through the morning light. Its engine hummed quietly as it rolled to a stop near the curb, department plates gleaming in the sun. The door opened with authority, and Chief Malcolm Ellison stepped out. His dress uniform was immaculate, navy blue with silver insignia, ribbons arranged in perfect rows across his chest, his badge catching the light as he moved. He had just come from the annual memorial ceremony downtown, where he had spoken about honor and service to a room full of dignitaries and press. Now he stood on this quiet suburban street, taking in the scene before him with the calm assessment of a man who had seen too much injustice in his career. Malcolm had been walking around the corner when he first spotted the patrol car. He had watched from a distance as the confrontation unfolded, seeing his wife's measured responses, witnessing Voss's aggressive posture, noting how the neighbors gathered to watch without intervening. He had seen enough to understand exactly what was happening. Voss noticed the SUV immediately. His shoulders tensed as he recognized the chief's vehicle, and his grip on Naomi's arm loosened slightly, but he didn't release her. Instead, he straightened up, trying to project confidence as Malcolm approached with measured steps. "Chief Ellison?" Voss called out, his voice carrying a forced casualness. "Good morning, sir. Just handling a routine investigation here." Malcolm stopped a few feet away, his dark eyes moving from Voss to Naomi and back again. When he looked at his wife, Naomi saw something flicker behind his professional mask. Anger, carefully controlled and deadly quiet. "Officer Voss," Malcolm said, his voice level and clear, "I'd like you to explain to me why you have this woman in custody." "She was acting suspicious, Chief, running through the neighborhood, checking out properties, refusing to provide identification when questioned." Voss's words came out in a rush, each justification building on the last. "Mrs. Marrow over there witnessed suspicious behavior and called it in. The subject became evasive when I tried to question her, showed signs of potential flight risk." Malcolm's gaze shifted to Evelyn, who stood frozen on her porch, her earlier confidence beginning to crack around the edges. "Mrs. Marrow, is it?" "Yes, Chief," Evelyn replied, her voice smaller than before. "I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. I know when someone doesn't belong." "And what specifically did you observe that made you believe this woman didn't belong?" Evelyn's mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water. "Well, she was looking around, casing the houses. You can tell when someone's up to no good." Malcolm nodded slowly, then turned back to Voss. "Continue with your report, officer." "Like I said, she refused to cooperate with questioning, wouldn't provide ID, kept claiming she lived here without any proof. When I attempted to detain her for further questioning, she became resistant." Voss was gaining momentum now, believing he was building a solid case. "I had reasonable suspicion to—" "What's your address?" Malcolm asked quietly, directing the question to Naomi. Naomi lifted her chin slightly. The handcuffs bit into her wrists as she spoke, but her voice remained steady and clear. 1247 Magnolia Row, 3 houses down from where we're standing. I've lived there for 3 years with my husband." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Voss's face went pale. "Your husband?" "Yes," Naomi said, her eyes never leaving Malcolm's face. "Chief Malcolm Ellison, the man standing right in front of you." The color drained completely from Voss's cheeks. Across the street, Evelyn Marrow took an involuntary step backward, her hand flying to her throat. The neighbors who had gathered to watch began murmuring among themselves, the sound carrying across the quiet street like rustling leaves. Malcolm's expression didn't change. His voice remained calm, professional, deadly quiet. "Officer Voss, you will remove those handcuffs immediately." "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." Voss fumbled for his keys, his hands shaking as he moved behind Naomi. "I had no idea, Chief. If I had known—" "You'll remove the cuffs," Malcolm interrupted, "but you will not leave this scene. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." The metal clicked open, and Naomi felt the pressure release from her wrists. She brought her hands forward slowly, wincing as circulation returned to her fingers. Red welts marked where the cuffs had cut into her skin, the marks already beginning to darken into bruises. Malcolm pulled out his phone and began taking photographs, first of Naomi's injured wrists, then of the patrol car, then of Voss himself. Each photo was methodical, deliberate, creating a record that couldn't be disputed or dismissed. The bathroom faucet ran cold water over Naomi's wrists as she stood at the sink, watching pink-tinged droplets swirl down the drain. The handcuff marks had deepened into angry red welts, the skin raw where the metal had cut into her flesh during Voss's rough handling. She held her hands steady under the stream, letting the cold numb the throbbing pain. "How bad is it?" Malcolm's voice came from the doorway behind her. "I've had worse." Naomi reached for a clean towel, patting her wrists dry with careful movements. "But we need to document everything properly." Malcolm nodded, pulling out his phone to photograph the injuries from multiple angles. The camera flash illuminated each mark, each bruise, creating evidence that couldn't be argued away later. "The app recording is downloading now. Full video and audio from the moment you activated it." "Good." Naomi turned to face him, leaning back against the bathroom counter. "We do this by the book, Malcolm. Every single step. No shortcuts, no special treatment, no family favors." "Naomi!" "No." Her voice cut through his protest like a blade. "The moment we handle this any differently than we would for anyone else, they'll claim it's personal revenge. They'll say the chief's wife got special treatment. They'll use it to discredit everything we uncover." Malcolm's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "You're right. We follow procedure. Exactly." A soft knock at the back door interrupted them. Malcolm moved through the house with practiced quiet, checking the window before opening the door to reveal Lieutenant Dana Reeves. She stepped inside without ceremony, her internal affairs badge visible on her belt, a sealed evidence bag in her hand. "Chief, Mrs. Ellison." Dana's greeting was professional but respectful. "I came through the back to avoid any neighbors who might be watching." "Smart thinking," Naomi said, joining them in the kitchen. "What do you need from us?" "Everything. The recording, photos of injuries, witness statements, timeline documentation." Dana set her bag on the kitchen counter and pulled out official forms. "Mrs. Ellison, I need you to understand that I'm going to treat this like any other complaint against an officer. That means I'll ask difficult questions. I wouldn't expect anything less." Naomi pulled out a chair at the kitchen table. "Ask whatever you need to ask." Dana opened her notebook, pen ready. "Walk me through every detail, starting from when you left the house this morning." As Naomi began her account, Malcolm transferred the safety app recording to a secure device. The video showed everything: Voss's initial approach, his escalating aggression, Evelyn's false accusations, the moment the handcuffs clicked into place. Every word, every gesture, captured in high definition. "This is solid evidence," Dana said, reviewing the footage. "But you know they'll try to discredit it somehow." Through the kitchen window, movement across the street caught their attention. Evelyn Marrow had emerged from her house and was walking toward Voss's patrol car, which still sat at the curb where he had parked it during the arrest. The officer leaned against his vehicle, arms crossed, his body language relaxed despite what had happened. "Look at that," Malcolm said quietly. They watched as Evelyn approached Voss, glancing around nervously before moving close enough to speak in whispers. Her hand touched his arm in a gesture of support, her head nodding as she spoke. Voss straightened up, his confidence returning as Evelyn continued talking. "She's reassuring him," Naomi observed, "telling him the neighborhood will back his story. Probably promising character witnesses," Dana added grimly. "This isn't over. It's just beginning." As if to prove her point, Malcolm's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened. "The city attorney's office. They want a meeting tomorrow morning. Quiet conversation, they say, before this becomes public." "Damage control," Dana muttered. "They want to settle this fast and quiet." "That's not going to happen," Naomi said firmly. "Not until we know how deep this goes." Her phone chimed with an email notification, then another, and another. Naomi opened the first message and felt her stomach drop. "What is it?" Malcolm asked. Naomi turned her phone so they could see the screen. "Official complaint filed against me with the HOA. Evelyn Marrow, complainant, says I was threatening residents during my run this morning." The second email was worse. A police report filed by Officer Garrett Voss, claiming that during the arrest, Naomi had become hostile and grabbed his arm in an attempt to resist lawful detention. The report painted her as aggressive, uncooperative, and potentially dangerous. "Unbelievable," Malcolm breathed. Dana leaned over to read the reports. These were filed less than 2 hours after the incident. They moved fast. Naomi stared at the false accusations on her phone screen, each lie carefully crafted to undermine her credibility. The bathroom encounter had been only the beginning. Now she understood what they were really facing. Not just one corrupt officer, but an entire system designed to protect itself by destroying anyone who threatened it. "They're not just covering up what happened," she said slowly. "They're going on the offensive." The morning light felt different in the Ellison house, harsher. Naomi sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, reading Voss's false police report for the third time. Each lie burned deeper than the last. "Listen to this," she said, as Malcolm poured coffee. Subject became increasingly agitated when asked for identification. Subject grabbed officer's arm in an attempt to prevent lawful detention. Subject used profanity and made threatening statements toward responding officers. Malcolm's cup clinked against the counter harder than necessary. Every word is a fabrication. "It gets worse." Naomi scrolled down. "Claims I was sweating excessively and appeared to be under the influence of unknown substances. Says I matched the description of a suspect from recent break-ins." "What break-ins? There haven't been any break-ins in Magnolia Row in over a year." "Exactly." Naomi closed the laptop. "This isn't just bad police work. This is calculated character assassination." A knock at the back door interrupted them. Dana Reeves stood on the porch, holding a manila folder thick with documents. Malcolm let her in quickly. "You need to see this," Dana said without preamble. She opened the folder on the kitchen table, revealing computer printouts of dispatch logs. "I pulled every call to Magnolia Row over the past 6 months. Evelyn Marrow has been busy." The logs told a disturbing story. Call after call from the same address, the same complainant, targeting different people. Unknown, black male checking mailboxes. Suspicious black female walking between houses. Unidentified black male in delivery truck lingering too long. "Look at the pattern," Dana said, pointing to dates and times. "Every Tuesday morning, every Thursday afternoon. She's calling during peak activity hours when people are most likely to see the police response." Naomi studied the names in the incident reports. Her chest tightened as recognition dawned. "I know these people." "What do you mean?" Malcolm asked. "Marcus Williams, the delivery driver who got stopped last month. He's in my emergency response class. So is Janet Torres, the nurse who was questioned for walking to her car after a night shift." Naomi's voice grew angry. "And Robert Jackson. He's a retired mail carrier who's lived here longer than most of these homeowners." Dana nodded grimly. Every single call resulted in a police response. Every single person was detained, questioned, or asked to leave the area. And every single report was handled by the same group of officers. "Voss's crew," Malcolm said. "Voss, Martinez, and Hendricks. Always one of those three. Dana pulled out another sheet. But here's what really bothers me. The response times are too fast. These officers were already in the area when the calls came in. Malcolm leaned closer to examine the timestamps. You're saying they were coordinating? I'm saying someone was feeding them intelligence about when to be in position. Dana's expression was deadly serious. This wasn't random harassment. This was a systematic campaign. Naomi stood up abruptly, pacing to the kitchen window. Across the street, Evelyn Marrow's house looked perfectly innocent in the morning light. White shutters, manicured lawn, American flag hanging from the porch. The picture of suburban respectability. I need to talk to these people, Naomi said. The ones who were targeted. They need to know they weren't isolated incidents. Naomi, Malcolm cautioned, if you start conducting interviews, not as the chief's wife, as someone they already trust. She turned back to face them. These people know me from the community classes. They'll talk to me in ways they'd never talk to internal affairs. Dana frowned. That could complicate the official investigation. Or it could save it. Naomi's voice carried the quiet authority Malcolm had learned to respect. If we wait for the bureaucracy to move, they'll have time to destroy evidence, coach witnesses, transfer officers. I can get statements now, while memories are fresh, and before anyone realizes we're building a case. Malcolm's phone buzzed with a text message from headquarters. He glanced at it and sighed. Captain Pike wants to see me. Says it's urgent. Be careful, Dana warned. Pike's been around long enough to know where all the bodies are buried. If there's a network protecting Voss, Pike would know about it, or be part of it, Naomi added quietly. The kitchen fell silent as the implications hung in the air. Malcolm had worked with Pike for 8 years. The man had been his ally during difficult budget fights, had supported his community policing initiatives, had stood with him when other senior officers resisted reforms. But trust was a luxury they could no longer afford. Malcolm kissed Naomi goodbye and headed for headquarters, while Dana gathered her evidence files. Naomi watched them both leave, then sat back down at her laptop. She had phone calls to make and people to see. An hour later, Malcolm sat across from Captain Pike in the senior officer's corner office. Pike's desk was cluttered with commendations, family photos, and coffee-stained reports. The man looked tired, older than his 54 years. Hell of a situation you're dealing with, Pike said, settling back in his chair. Voss really stepped in at this time. Malcolm kept his expression neutral. I'm more concerned with the false report he filed afterward. Yeah, about that. Pike rubbed his forehead. Look, Malcolm, I've been thinking. Maybe the best thing for everyone is to suspend the inquiry. Let things cool down. Avoid turning this into some kind of racial drama that tears the department apart. Racial drama? Malcolm's voice carried a warning edge. You know what I mean. The media, the activists, the politicians looking for their next cause. This thing could blow up and hurt everyone involved, including your wife. Malcolm studied Pike's face carefully. What makes you think the media would be interested? Come on, Malcolm. Police chief's wife gets arrested by white officer in wealthy neighborhood? That's front-page material right there. Pike leaned forward. But if we handle it quietly, maybe transfer Voss to another district, issue a formal apology. Everyone moves on. And the other incidents? The pattern of harassment in Magnolia Row? Pike's expression flickered almost imperceptibly. What other incidents? Malcolm had not mentioned any other incidents. Neither had Dana's preliminary report, which Pike should not have seen yet anyway. But somehow, Pike already knew there were other incidents to worry about. The dispatch logs show multiple calls from the same complainant over 6 months, Malcolm said carefully, all targeting black residents and visitors. Oh, that, Pike waved dismissively. Neighborhood watch stuff, concerned citizens reporting suspicious activity. Nothing unusual there. But Malcolm caught something in Pike's tone, a rehearsed quality, as if he had practiced this explanation. And the way Pike avoided eye contact when he said, suspicious activity, suggested he knew exactly what kind of activity Evelyn Marrow had been reporting. I think we need a full investigation, Malcolm said. Pike's friendly demeanor shifted slightly. Malcolm, I'm trying to help you here. Don't let family loyalty cloud your judgment as a leader. Family loyalty. As if wanting justice for his wife was somehow unprofessional. Malcolm felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. I'll take that under advisement, Captain. Good. Glad we understand each other. Pike smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. By the way, I heard Voss might be requesting a transfer anyway. Sometimes these things work themselves out. Malcolm left Pike's office with absolute certainty that someone inside the department was protecting Voss. The question was whether Pike was just following orders or giving them. The Riverside Community Center sat on the edge of Magnolia Row, a modest brick building that served as neutral ground between the wealthy neighborhood and the working-class streets beyond. Naomi parked in the small lot, noting how the building's cheerful yellow doors contrasted with the tension she carried in her shoulders. Inside, the familiar smell of industrial coffee and cleaning supplies greeted her. The main room held folding tables arranged in a U-shape, with first aid posters and emergency evacuation maps covering the walls. This was where she taught monthly workshops on crisis response, where neighbors learned to help each other when disasters struck. Today, 3 people waited for her in the small conference room she had reserved. They sat apart from each other, unsure why they had been asked to come, but trusting Naomi enough to show up. Harold Benton arrived first. At 68, he moved carefully, but with the dignity of a man who had walked every street in 3 zip codes for 30 years. His postal service uniform might be retired, but his posture still carried the pride of someone who had served his community faithfully. Layla Mercer sat near the window, 17 years old, and wearing the careful composure of a teenager who had learned too early that the world could be cruel without warning. Her honor student pin caught the afternoon light as she fidgeted with her backpack straps. Adrian Cole stood by the emergency supplies cabinet, reading the labels with professional interest. At 45, he had the weathered hands of someone who crawled under houses and climbed into attics for a living. His tool belt was absent, but his work boots and practical clothes marked him as a man who fixed things for a living. Naomi set her notebook on the table and pulled 3 chairs into a comfortable circle. Thank you all for coming. I know this might feel strange, but I think we have something important to discuss. Harold cleared his throat gently. This about what happened to you yesterday morning? Heard about it from my neighbor. She saw the whole thing from her kitchen window. Partly, yes. Naomi sat down and faced them directly. But I think what happened to me has been happening to others. I think there's been a pattern of harassment in this neighborhood, and I want to understand it. The room fell quiet. Layla shifted in her seat, while Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I want to be very clear, Naomi continued. Nothing you tell me today will be shared without your explicit permission. But if you've had negative encounters with police in Magnolia Row, particularly involving Officer Garrett Voss, or complaints from the HOA, your experiences might help protect other people. Harold spoke first, his voice soft but steady. 3 months ago, I was delivering mail to Elm Street, same route I'd walked for 15 years. This woman, blonde hair, expensive car, starts following me house to house, says I'm casing the neighborhood, looking for things to steal. His hands trembled slightly as he continued. Officer Voss shows up 20 minutes later, makes me dump my entire mailbag on the sidewalk. Federal mail, spread out on the concrete for everyone to see. Made me show him every package, every letter. Neighbors coming out of their houses, staring at me like I was some kind of criminal. Naomi wrote carefully in her notebook. Do you remember the exact date? September 15th, Tuesday. I remember because I had to file an incident report with the Postal Service. Got written up for delayed delivery because of the time it took. And the woman who complained? Fancy house with the stone lions out front. Drives a white Mercedes. Evelyn Marrow's house. Naomi made a note. Layla spoke next, her voice barely above a whisper. October 23rd. After school, around 4 o'clock. I was walking to my grandma's house on Oak Avenue. She's lived there since before I was born. Her composure cracked slightly. Same officer, same woman calling it in, I think, because I saw her watching from her porch. He said I was suspicious, walking too slow, looking at houses, put handcuffs on me right there on the sidewalk. My grandma came out screaming, had to show him pictures of me at Christmas dinner to prove I belonged there. Naomi felt anger building in her chest, but kept her voice gentle. How long did they keep you handcuffed? 20 minutes. Neighbors staring the whole time, some of them recording with their phones. Layla's voice hardened. I had bruises on my wrists for a week. Still can't walk down that street without feeling sick. Adrian stepped away from the cabinet and sat down heavily. November 8th. I was doing a home inspection on Maple Drive. Legitimate job, had all my paperwork, client was expecting me. That same woman calls the police, says there's a suspicious man breaking into houses. He rubbed his forehead. Voss shows up, treats me like I'm lying about everything, makes me sit on the curb while he calls my client to verify my story. Takes an hour. Client gets nervous, cancels the contract. Did you lose other work because of it? Word travels fast in a small business. 3 other clients in that neighborhood canceled over the next 2 weeks. Cost me about $4,000 in lost income. Naomi looked at her notes, seeing the pattern emerging clearly. Same complainant, same officer, same neighborhood, different victims, same method. The reports, she said. Did any of you ever see the official police reports from these incidents? All 3 shook their heads. I asked, Harold said. They told me no report was filed because the situation was resolved peacefully, like public humiliation is peaceful. Same here, Adrian added. Nothing happened officially, so there's nothing to complain about officially. Naomi closed her notebook and looked at each of them carefully. I want to ask for your help, but I also want you to understand that fighting back might mean more attention, more questions, maybe even retaliation. What kind of help? Layla asked. Formal statement, dates, times, details, evidence that shows a pattern of harassment targeting black residents and visitors. It won't be easy, and there's no guarantee of justice. Harold straightened in his chair. I spent 30 years delivering mail to every house in this city. Rich, poor, black, white, didn't matter. Everyone got their mail. Everyone got treated with respect. If someone thinks they can run me off the streets I served, they're wrong. Layla nodded slowly. I'm starting college next year. I don't want other kids going through what I went through. Adrian stood up, his decision made. I've got emails, canceled contracts, even photos from that day. Whatever you need. Naomi felt something shift in her chest. Not just anger now, but purpose. These 3 people had suffered alone, carrying shame that belonged to their harassers. But together, their stories formed something powerful. Proof. She pulled out her phone and opened a new document. Let's start with exact dates and times. We're going to map every incident, every call, every response. We're going to make the pattern impossible to ignore. For the next hour, they worked methodically. Naomi asked detailed questions, confirmed timelines, and helped each person remember details they thought they had forgotten. The pain was heavy in the room, but so was determination. When they finished, Naomi had 7 pages of notes and a clear timeline spanning 4 months. She walked to the wall where community emergency procedures were posted and pulled down a large cork board. One by one, she pinned up index cards with names, dates, and key details. Harold Benton, September 15th, mailbag dumped, Elm Street. Layla Mercer, October 23rd, handcuffed, Oak Avenue. Adrian Cole, November 8th, client canceled, Maple Drive. Then she added her own card, Naomi Ellison, December 12th, wrongful arrest, Pine Street. 4 victims, 4 months. Same complainant, same officer, same neighborhood. The map was forming, and the pattern was undeniable. The living room felt different that evening. Malcolm sat forward on the couch, remote control tight in his hand as the local news began. Naomi curled beside him, still wearing the clothes she'd changed into after the community center meeting. The coffee table held their untouched dinner plates. Our top story tonight, the anchor said, her voice carrying that practiced concern news people used for controversy. A local police officer speaks out after a confrontation with the police chief's family that has divided the community. Malcolm's jaw tightened. Naomi reached over and touched his arm. The screen cut to Officer Garrett Voss, standing outside the police station, looking clean and professional in his dress uniform. Beside him stood Evelyn Marrow, wearing a pale blue sweater and pearls, her gray hair perfectly styled. "I've served this community for 12 years, Voss said, staring directly into the camera. "I've always done my job with integrity and fairness. But when you try to protect a neighborhood, and the suspect turns out to be connected to department leadership, suddenly you're the bad guy." "Connected," Malcolm said quietly. "Like being married makes someone connected instead of being a person." Voss continued, his voice getting stronger. "I responded to a legitimate complaint about suspicious activity. I followed protocol. I was respectful and professional. But I was set up by people who wanted to make this about race instead of safety." The camera shifted to Evelyn. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, though Naomi noticed no actual tears. "I'm just a concerned neighbor," Evelyn said, her voice shaking slightly. "I saw someone checking door handles, moving between houses in a way that seemed wrong. I called because that's what we're supposed to do, right? Watch out for each other?" "You lying witch," Malcolm muttered. When the officer arrived, this woman became immediately hostile and aggressive. Evelyn continued. "She refused to cooperate, became physical. I was terrified. Now I'm being painted as some kind of racist for trying to protect my community." The reporter's voice cut in. "The incident was captured on body camera footage. We want to warn viewers that some may find the following images disturbing." Naomi sat up straighter. This was the first time any footage had been released publicly. The clip lasted maybe 10 seconds. It showed Naomi turning her shoulder away from Voss's reaching hand, her face tense, her body language appearing defensive. The audio caught her saying, "Don't touch me," in a sharp voice. Then it cut to her in handcuffs, looking angry. "That's not what happened," Naomi said, her voice deadly quiet. The clip looped twice more. Each time it looked worse for Naomi. Out of context, she appeared combative, uncooperative. The edited version made it seem like she escalated the situation. Malcolm was already reaching for his phone. "That footage is completely edited. They cut out everything before and after." The news segment returned to Voss and Evelyn. "This is what happens when politics gets involved in police work," Voss said. "Good officers get thrown under the bus to satisfy an agenda. I just hope the truth comes out before someone gets hurt." Evelyn nodded sadly. "I pray this family finds peace and stops trying to destroy the lives of people who were just doing their jobs." The anchor wrapped up the story with a comment about ongoing investigations and community tensions. Then the broadcast moved on to weather. Malcolm turned off the television. The living room fell into heavy silence. Naomi's phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then started ringing continuously. She looked at the screen. Text messages were pouring in. The first few she read made her stomach drop. "Dr. Ellison, we need to pause funding for the emergency response program pending review of recent events. Board meeting tomorrow to discuss your role as instructor. Donors expressing concerns about association with controversy. We'll need to suspend operations until this matter is resolved." Malcolm watched her face change as she read. How bad? "They're shutting down the program, all of it. The funding, the classes, everything." She set the phone down carefully. Within hours of that broadcast, Malcolm's phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and sighed. "Mayor's office," he answered. Naomi could hear the voice on the other end, urgent and demanding. "Chief Ellison, understand the pressure you're under. Need to lower the temperature. Community healing. Maybe take some time." Malcolm's responses were short. "I see. Understood. I'll consider it." When he hung up, his face was grim. That was the third call like that tonight. City manager, 2 council members, and now the mayor. All saying basically the same thing. Back down. Let it go. Take some leave time until things cool off. Naomi picked up the remote and rewound the news segment. She played the body cam footage again, studying it carefully. "Look at this," she said, pausing the video. "Look where it starts." Malcolm leaned closer. "His hand is already reaching for you." Exactly. The clip begins after he already moved toward me. It cuts out him demanding ID, me explaining where I live, Evelyn's accusations, everything. She paused it again. And look at the timestamp. Malcolm squinted at the small numbers in the corner. There's a gap. The time jumps forward. 2 minutes missing, maybe 3. Naomi's voice was getting stronger. This footage was deliberately edited to make me look guilty. The department controls body cam footage, Malcolm said slowly. Only certain people have access to edit and release it. Naomi looked at her husband, understanding passing between them. Voss couldn't have done this alone, she said. He doesn't have the access or the authority. Malcolm nodded grimly. Someone inside helped him. Someone with rank. Someone who wanted to control the narrative. Naomi stood up and began pacing. They're not just protecting Voss. They're actively working against us. Against you. The enemy isn't just Voss anymore, she said, turning to face Malcolm. It's whoever cut that tape. The community center felt different this morning. Yesterday's warmth had been replaced by something colder, more careful. Naomi arrived early, choosing a corner table far from the main entrance. She spread her notebook across the surface and waited. Adrian Cole walked in, carrying a thick manila envelope and a laptop bag. His face looked tired, like he hadn't slept well. He spotted Naomi and made his way over, glancing around the room before sitting down. "Thank you for meeting me," Naomi said quietly. "After what I saw on the news last night, I figured you needed all the help you could get." Adrian opened his envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. "They really did a number on you with that footage. It was edited, deliberately." Naomi kept her voice steady. "We're going to prove it." Adrian nodded and spread the papers between them. "These are copies of everything I kept. Contracts, emails, inspection reports, scheduling records, the whole mess with Evelyn Marrow's interference." Naomi studied the first document. It was an email from a client dated 2 months ago. The subject line read, "Canceling home inspection, safety concerns." She read aloud, "Mr. Cole, we've received information that there may be safety issues with your inspection services. The Homeowners Association office contacted us directly to express concerns about allowing unknown contractors in the neighborhood. We've decided to use someone else. Sorry for the short notice." "That was the first one," Adrian said bitterly. "I'd been working that neighborhood for 3 years. Never had a single complaint. Then suddenly I'm unknown and a safety concern." Naomi flipped through more emails. The language was similar across multiple clients. Safety concerns, unknown contractors, neighborhood protection, all traced back to contact from Evelyn's HOA office. "Here's the thing that really got me suspicious," Adrian said, pointing to a specific email. "Look at the timing. This client canceled on a Tuesday morning, but I wasn't even supposed to be there until Thursday. Someone was watching my schedule." Naomi's phone buzzed. A text from Malcolm. "Dana's here, bringing dispatch logs." 5 minutes later, Lieutenant Dana Reeves entered the community center. She wore civilian clothes, but moved with unmistakable police authority. She carried a briefcase and scanned the room professionally before approaching their table. "Dr. Ellison," Dana said, extending her hand. "Lieutenant Reeves, Internal Affairs." Naomi shook her hand. "Thank you for coming." Dana sat down and opened her briefcase. "I've been reviewing dispatch logs for the past 6 months, looking at calls originating from your neighborhood specifically." She pulled out printed pages covered with timestamps and officer assignments. "What did you find?" Naomi asked. "Something interesting." Dana spread the logs across the table. "Look at these incidents. Suspicious person calls, welfare checks, trespassing reports, all from the same general area, all involving descriptions of black males or females." She pointed to specific entries. "Here's the pattern. When these calls came in, they weren't assigned to the nearest available unit like standard procedure requires. They were routed directly to specific officers." Adrian leaned closer. "Which officers?" "Mostly Voss. Sometimes 2 others who work similar shifts." Dana's finger traced down the list. "But here's the really interesting part. Look who reviewed and signed off on these incident reports." Naomi read the supervisor's signatures. "Captain Russell Pike." "Every single one," Dana confirmed. Pike marked them all as resolved with no further action needed, which means he was personally tracking these calls. Naomi felt a chill run down her spine. How many calls are we talking about? 37 in 6 months, all from the same approximate area, all involving people of color, all handled by the same small group of officers and approved by Pike. Dana's voice was steady, but her eyes showed anger. Adrian was rifling through his papers. Wait, some of these dates match up with my canceled contracts. He compared his emails to Dana's logs. Look, this client canceled on September 15th after getting a safety warning. And here's a dispatch call on September 14th for a suspicious contractor in that exact neighborhood. Naomi stared at the matching dates. They were calling the police on you before you even arrived for work. Someone was feeding information both ways, Dana said grimly. Civilian complaints going to specific officers, and police intelligence coming back to civilian sources. Naomi pulled out her phone and scrolled through the photos she'd taken of Evelyn's HOA messages. She found the screenshots and enlarged them on her screen. Look at this phrase that keeps showing up, she said, pointing to the messages. Preserve neighborhood character. It appears in almost every complaint about black residents or visitors. Dana read over Naomi's shoulder. That's not random language. That's coded messaging. Adrian found another email. Here it is again. The HOA office is committed to preserving neighborhood character and ensuring appropriate oversight of all service providers. Appropriate oversight, Naomi repeated slowly, like they were running their own intelligence operation. Dana was taking notes rapidly. If Pike was signing off on these reports and marking them resolved, he was essentially treating civilian complaints like official police intelligence. That's a serious violation of protocol. Naomi's phone rang. Malcolm's name appeared on the screen. I'm at the station, Malcolm said when she answered. I managed to get access to Pike's computer records. You need to see what I found. What is it? Pike has been accessing body cam footage for months, specifically footage from Voss and those other 2 officers. He's been reviewing incidents before they were even officially reported. Naomi felt her heart rate increase. He was monitoring them, not monitoring, protecting, making sure nothing stuck. Malcolm's voice was tight with controlled anger. But there's more. I found a file on his desktop. It's labeled Neighborhood Watch Coordination. Dana leaned closer to the phone. Chief, this is Lieutenant Reeves. What's in that file? Names, addresses, license plates, descriptions. It looks like an unofficial watch list. Malcolm paused. Naomi, your name is on it. The community center seemed to go completely silent around them. When was my name added? Naomi asked quietly. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks before your arrest. Naomi looked at Dana, then at Adrian. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture that was worse than any of them had imagined. They were planning this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The arrest wasn't random. It was orchestrated. That afternoon, Malcolm straightened his uniform and walked down the polished hallway toward the conference room at police headquarters. His footsteps echoed against the marble floors. Department brass would be waiting for him, and he carried a thick folder under his arm that would change everything. The conference room held 6 senior officers around a mahogany table. Captain Pike sat at the far end, his face carefully neutral. Deputy Chief Martinez nodded as Malcolm entered. Commander Brooks looked up from his coffee with tired eyes. Gentlemen, Malcolm said, setting his folder on the table, we need to discuss Officer Garrett Voss. Pike leaned back in his chair. Chief, I hope we're not letting personal feelings drive department decisions. Malcolm's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. This isn't personal, Captain. This is about evidence. He opened the folder and spread papers across the table. Dispatch logs, victim statement, timeline charts. Lieutenant Reeves has documented 37 suspicious person calls from the Magnolia Row area in 6 months, all routed to the same officers, all signed off by the same supervisor. Commander Brooks picked up one of the logs. These dates go back months before your wife's incident. Exactly. This wasn't one bad moment. This was systematic targeting. Malcolm pointed to specific entries. Harold Benton, retired mail carrier, forced to empty his mail bag on the sidewalk. Layla Mercer, honor student, handcuffed outside her grandmother's house. Adrian Cole, licensed inspector. Lost multiple contracts after being labeled suspicious. Deputy Chief Martinez studied the timeline. All these people are willing to testify? Yes, and we have more than testimony. Malcolm pulled out his phone and played a clear audio recording. Naomi's voice came through the speaker, calm and controlled as Voss shouted commands and threats. The room fell silent as the recording played. Voss's voice filled the air, aggressive and contemptuous. Then came Naomi's steady responses, documenting everything as it happened. She activated her safety app, Malcolm explained. The entire arrest was broadcast live to multiple witnesses, including a retired judge and 2 city council members. Pike shifted in his seat. Chief, even if there were procedural errors, we need to consider department morale. The officers are feeling targeted. Malcolm turned toward Pike, his voice sharp. Captain, which officers are feeling targeted? The ones who follow procedure or the ones who don't? Commander Brooks cleared his throat. What are you recommending? Administrative suspension for Voss, pending full investigation, internal affairs review of all related incidents, and immediate retraining for any officer involved in these questionable stops. Deputy Chief Martinez nodded slowly. The evidence supports suspension. We can't have officers making unauthorized arrests based on civilian complaints that may be racially motivated. Pike's face hardened. This sets a dangerous precedent. Every arrest will be second-guessed. Good, Malcolm said flatly. Every arrest should be defensible. The vote was quick. 5 in favor of suspension, 1 abstention from Pike. An hour later, Malcolm stood beside Lieutenant Dana Reeves as she delivered the official paperwork. Voss sat in the break room, his face red with anger as he read the suspension order. This is political, Voss snarled. The chief's using his position to protect his wife. Dana's voice was ice-cold. Officer Voss, you're suspended with pay pending investigation. Turn in your weapon, badge, and patrol vehicle keys. Voss slammed his coffee cup down. You people are destroying this department. Malcolm stepped forward. Officer, you'll address Lieutenant Reeves with respect, or be escorted from the building. Voss stood up, his chair scraping loudly. This isn't over. No, Malcolm said quietly. It's not. By evening, the city had issued a press release announcing the internal review. Local news covered the story with careful language about procedural violations and community concerns. Naomi sat in their kitchen, reading supportive messages on her phone. Neighbors who had stayed silent were reaching out. Parents thanked her for standing up. Other professionals shared their own stories of harassment. Harold called to say he was ready to testify. Layla's grandmother left a voicemail expressing gratitude. Adrian texted that 3 more contractors wanted to join the complaint. Malcolm found Naomi smiling for the first time in weeks. It's working, she said softly. People are speaking up. Meanwhile, across town, Evelyn Marrow sat in a parked sedan near the municipal building. Captain Pike slid into the passenger seat, looking around nervously. Evelyn handed him a manila folder. Everything you need is in there. Video clips, edited transcripts, timeline adjustments. Pike opened the folder and saw USB drives labeled with dates and incident numbers. This makes her look aggressive? Pike asked. More than aggressive. Dangerous. Unhinged. Someone who shouldn't be trusted with community safety programs. Evelyn's voice was calm, almost pleasant. The reporter is expecting your call. As Naomi and Malcolm walked to their car outside headquarters, both feeling hopeful for the first time in days, Pike was already dialing a number. The edited footage would be in the reporter's inbox within minutes. That night, Naomi spread witness statements across their dining room table. The papers formed neat piles under the warm light of the chandelier. Harold Benton's handwritten account sat beside Layla Mercer's typed testimony. Each page told the same story of harassment and humiliation. Malcolm walked into the room carrying 2 cups of coffee. How many more do we have? 15 confirmed. 3 more coming tomorrow. Naomi picked up Adrian Cole's statement and read it again. This inspector lost 4 contracts because Evelyn spread rumors about him being suspicious. 4 jobs, Malcolm. That's how someone feeds their family. Her phone buzzed with another message of support. Then another. The community was finally speaking up. Malcolm sat beside her and reached for Harold's statement. His handwriting reminds me of my grandfather's. All these older folks, they remember when speaking up meant real danger, but they're doing it anyway. Naomi smiled, feeling hope for the first time in days. We're going to win this. Then her phone buzzed again. This time the message made her stomach drop. Malcolm, look at this. The text contained a link to a news website. The headline read, Police Chief's Wife Attacks Officer in Shocking Video. Malcolm grabbed the phone. They watched together as grainy footage played on the screen. The video showed Naomi turning toward Voss just before he grabbed her arms, but the angle made it look like she moved aggressively first. The audio was missing, so viewers couldn't hear her calm questions or his angry commands. This isn't what happened, Naomi whispered. The footage has been edited. Malcolm's voice was tight with fury. Someone cropped out everything that came before. The video had been shared thousands of times. Comments flooded the screen, most of them ugly and hateful. Naomi closed the phone before reading more. By morning, everything changed. Naomi sat in Chief Martinez's office as he delivered the news. The mayor's office received pressure from multiple city council members. They're reinstating Voss pending full review. Based on edited footage, Malcolm's voice was sharp. Based on public concern about department credibility, Martinez replied carefully. The edited video raised questions. That afternoon brought worse news. A sheriff's deputy served papers at their front door. Evelyn Marrow was suing Naomi and Malcolm for intimidation, harassment, and emotional distress. The lawsuit claimed they used police resources for personal revenge. Malcolm read the papers twice. She's asking for $200,000. It's not about money, Naomi said. She wants to bury us in legal costs. The phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting statements. Friends offering support. But some calls were different. Angry voices leaving threats. The final blow came Wednesday morning. Naomi arrived at the community center to find a letter on her desk from the city's emergency services department. Her emergency response program was losing its funding, effective immediately. The current controversy makes continued support inappropriate, the letter read. Naomi sat in her empty office and felt the walls closing in. 3 years of building trust with families. Hundreds of people trained in basic first aid and crisis response, all gone because of lies. Her phone rang. Malcolm's voice was strained. Naomi, Captain Pike just left my office. The mayor wants to meet with me Friday about my resignation. What? Pike says the scandal is damaging public trust in the department. If I step down, things can go back to normal. Naomi closed her eyes. And if you don't, they'll find another way to remove me. Thursday morning, Naomi found the front window of the community center smashed. A brick lay among the broken glass, wrapped in paper with a message scrawled in red ink. Go back where you belong. Malcolm wanted to assign police protection immediately. This is escalating. Someone could get hurt. We cannot look afraid, Naomi said firmly. That's exactly what they want. Instead, she studied everything. The timing of the attack happened between the security guards' rounds. The brick came from a construction site 3 blocks away. The vandal knew the building's schedule perfectly. Most important, they had avoided every visible security camera except one. Naomi stood across the street, looking up at an old traffic camera mounted on a utility pole. The angle was wrong for monitoring cars, but perfect for watching the community center's front entrance. She pulled out her phone and called the traffic department. I need footage from camera TC47 between midnight and 6 a.m. yesterday. The morning air carried the smell of broken glass and fresh coffee. Naomi stood beside the shattered window of the community center, watching Lieutenant Dana Reeves examine the brick and paper. Clean break pattern, Dana said, crouching near the glass fragments. Single impact, thrown from about 15 feet away. Professional job. Malcolm handed Dana a coffee cup. The traffic department pulled footage from the camera across the street. Should be ready in an hour. Good. Dana stood and brushed glass dust from her knees. Whoever did this knew the security schedule perfectly, but they missed something. She pointed at the old traffic camera mounted on the utility pole. That angle catches everything the building cameras miss. Someone got sloppy. An hour later, they crowded around Dana's laptop in Malcolm's office. The traffic camera footage played in grainy black and white, but the image was clear enough. A man in work clothes approached the community center at 2:17 a.m. He carried a brick and looked directly at the building's security camera before throwing, but he never looked up at the traffic camera. "Freeze it there," Naomi said. Dana paused the video as the man turned toward the street. The face was visible for 3 seconds. "I know him," Malcolm said quietly. "Jerry Hendricks. He does contractor work around Magnolia Row." Dana pulled up city records on her laptop. Hendricks Construction, licensed for residential repairs and landscaping. She scrolled through recent permits. "Look at this client list." The screen showed dozens of work orders for Magnolia Row addresses. Half of them were signed by Evelyn Marrow as HOA representative. "She has been using him for months," Naomi said. "Pool repairs, fence work, driveway cleaning, and now window smashing," Dana added. She saved the footage to a secure drive. "This gives us direct connection between the vandalism and the HOA. Malcolm leaned back in his chair. "We arrest Hendricks. He leads us to Evelyn." "No." Naomi's voice was firm. "Not yet." Both Dana and Malcolm stared at her. "Every time we build evidence quietly, someone leaks it," Naomi explained. "Pike knew about our witness statements before we finished collecting them. The edited video appeared the same day we filed our official complaint. Someone inside the department is feeding information to Evelyn." She walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. "But I noticed something. Evelyn only reacts when she thinks evidence is hidden from her. She panics when she cannot control the story." Malcolm frowned. "What are you thinking?" "We stop hiding." Naomi turned back to face them. "We announce a public neighborhood safety meeting. Tomorrow night at the community center." "That sounds like walking into a trap," Dana said. "It is a trap," Naomi replied, "but not for us. We invite everyone, city officials, press, residents, police leadership, HOA board members, everyone who has been whispering behind closed doors." Malcolm understood immediately. "Evelyn will think it is her chance to humiliate you publicly." "Exactly. She will come prepared to defend herself, which means she will bring Pike and anyone else who has been protecting this system." Naomi's eyes were bright with determination. "They will walk right into the light." Dana saved the video file and closed her laptop. "You want them all in one room when we reveal everything." "I want them confident," Naomi said. "Confident people make mistakes." Malcolm picked up his phone. "I will call the mayor's office. Frame it as community healing and transparency. Make sure Pike gets a personal invitation," Naomi added. "Tell him the department needs strong representation to restore public trust." "He will accept, because he thinks he can control the room," Malcolm said, already dialing. Dana gathered her files. "What about the media?" "Local news only. We want coverage, but not a circus." Naomi pulled out her notebook and began writing. "I need to build a timeline, everything in order, every piece of evidence connected." She spent the afternoon organizing 3 years of harassment into a clear pattern. The arrest footage from her emergency app, dispatch logs showing response times that varied by caller, HOA messages using coded language about suspicious activity, victim statements describing identical treatment, body cam access records showing who edited what footage when. Each piece of evidence got its own section on a large white board: dates, times, witnesses, documentation. By evening, the conference room looked like a detective's investigation wall. Malcolm found her there at 9 p.m., still organizing papers. "The meeting is set for tomorrow at 7, he said. "Mayor Martinez will open. City Council members confirmed. Channel 8 will broadcast live." Naomi stepped back from the evidence board and studied the complete timeline. 3 years of systematic harassment reduced to clear, undeniable facts. "They think they are coming to watch me fail," she said quietly. Malcolm stood beside her, looking at the wall of evidence. "What are they really walking into?" Naomi picked up a red marker and drew connections between Pike's name, Voss's reports, and Evelyn's complaint history. "The truth," she said. "We will let the guilty walk into the light themselves." The Magnolia Row Community Hall buzzed with nervous energy as residents filed in through the main doors. Folding chairs had been arranged in neat rows facing a small stage, where a projector screen hung ready. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across faces that carried 3 years of buried tension. Evelyn Marrow entered like she owned the building. She wore a pale blue dress suit and pearl earrings, her silver hair perfectly styled. Her heels clicked against the linoleum floor as she chose a seat in the front row, dead center. She nodded to supporters who had arrived early to claim strategic spots. Officer Garrett Voss slid into the seat beside her. His uniform was pressed sharp, his badge polished bright. He crossed his arms and leaned back with the casual confidence of a man who believed he had already won this fight. "Packed house tonight?" Voss murmured to Evelyn. "Good," she replied, adjusting her purse strap. "Let them all see what happens when troublemakers try to destroy a peaceful neighborhood." Captain Russell Pike positioned himself near the back wall with Mayor Martinez and 2 city council members. His dress uniform displayed every ribbon and commendation from 28 years of service. Pike kept his eyes on Chief Malcolm Ellison, who stood quietly beside the side door, arms at his sides, face unreadable. The hall filled quickly. Harold Benton sat with his wife near the middle, his weathered hands folded in his lap. Layla Mercer entered with her grandmother, both women moving with careful dignity toward empty seats. Adrian Cole arrived carrying a manila folder thick with papers, his contractor's shirt clean but showing the wear of honest work. Residents whispered to each other, stealing glances at the front row where Evelyn held court. Some faces showed curiosity, others carried fear. A few displayed the quiet anger of people who had stayed silent too long. Channel 8 set up cameras near the back corner. Reporter Sandra Mills checked her microphone and scanned the crowd, sensing the electric tension that filled rooms before storms broke. At exactly 7 o'clock, Naomi Ellison walked onto the small stage. She wore a simple black blazer and dark jeans, her emergency response instructor badge clipped to her collar. No makeup covered the small scar on her cheek from where Voss's handcuffs had cut her skin. She moved to the podium without hurry. Her eyes swept the room once, taking in every face, every posture, every alliance revealed by seating choices. "Good evening," Naomi said, her voice carrying clearly without the microphone. "Thank you for coming tonight. We are here to talk about safety." The room quieted. "Real safety cannot be built on fear," Naomi continued. "It cannot be built on suspicion that targets some neighbors while protecting others. Safety requires trust. Trust requires truth." Evelyn shifted in her chair. Her supporters exchanged glances. For 3 years, residents in this neighborhood have experienced different kinds of police response, depending on who they are and who calls about them, Naomi said. "Tonight, we examine that pattern." "Excuse me." Evelyn's voice cut through the room like a blade. She stood without being recognized, her hands planted on her hips. "I think we all know why we are really here." The room tensed. Mayor Martinez started to speak, but Evelyn continued. "This woman wants to divide our neighborhood," Evelyn declared, pointing at Naomi. "She wants to turn neighbors against each other because she could not accept that an officer was doing his job." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some residents nodded, others frowned. Voss rose beside Evelyn, his chest puffed out. "Officers cannot do their jobs if powerful people punish us every time we respond to legitimate concerns about suspicious activity." Harold Benton slowly stood up. "I would like to speak." "About what?" Evelyn snapped. "About how hard it is to follow simple instructions when you are where you do not belong." Gasps echoed through the room. Harold's wife reached for his hand, but he stepped forward. "I delivered mail in this neighborhood for 32 years, Harold said quietly. "I know every house number, every resident, every business. On March 15th, Officer Voss made me empty my mailbag onto the sidewalk because Mrs. Marrow called to report suspicious activity." "That never happened," Voss said loudly. Layla Mercer stood next. "I was handcuffed outside my grandmother's house while visiting for Sunday dinner." "Exaggerated," called out a voice from Evelyn's section. Adrian Cole rose with his folder. I lost 4 inspection contracts after Mrs. Marrow told clients I was casing houses. Lies? Evelyn declared. All lies designed to— Let them speak. Naomi's voice cut through the chaos without shouting. The room fell silent again. The hostility hung thick in the air. Evelyn's supporters whispered angrily among themselves. Pike watched Malcolm carefully, looking for any sign of how this would unfold. Naomi waited. She let the division reveal itself completely. She let Evelyn's people show their true faces before dozens of witnesses and live television cameras. I never targeted anyone, Voss finally declared, his voice carrying across the silent room. I respond to calls about criminal behavior. I do not care what color someone is. Naomi walked to the projector and turned it on. Let's examine that claim, she said calmly. The first dispatch log appeared on the screen, showing Evelyn Marrow's phone number linked to a complaint about Harold Benton. The first dispatch log glowed on the wall-mounted screen. Harold's address appeared in stark black letters alongside Evelyn's phone number and the timestamp, March 15th, 10:47 a.m. Mrs. Marrow called to report suspicious individual examining mailboxes, Naomi read from the document. Officer Voss arrived 11 minutes later. She clicked to the next slide. Harold's incident report appeared, but entire sections remained blank. No description of the individual, no mention of Mr. Benton identifying himself as the mail carrier, no record of him producing his postal service identification. Naomi's voice stayed level. Most interesting. No mention of forcing him to empty his mailbag in public. Harold nodded grimly. Several residents turned to look at him with new understanding. That's because nothing like that happened, Voss called out. This is fabricated evidence. Naomi clicked again. A photograph filled the screen showing Harold kneeling on the sidewalk, mail scattered around him, while Voss stood over him with his arms crossed. Mrs. Patterson took this from her kitchen window, Naomi said. She kept it because she felt sick watching it happen, but was too scared to intervene. An elderly woman near the back raised her hand. That's me. I still have nightmares about it. The crowd murmured. Some faces showed shame. Others displayed growing anger. Naomi advanced to the next slide. Layla's dispatch record appeared with Evelyn's number again. June 8th, Mrs. Marrow reported, young person casing the Mitchell residence. Officer Voss arrived within 8 minutes and handcuffed 17-year-old Layla Mercer while she waited for her grandmother to answer the door. She matched a description from recent break-ins, Voss protested. What description? Naomi asked. She clicked to show Voss's report. Quote, young black female, approximately 5'6", wearing casual clothes. That describes roughly 40% of teenage girls in this city. Layla's grandmother stood up. My granddaughter has straight A's and volunteers at the library. She was wearing her church dress and carrying homemade cookies. The report mentions neither the dress nor the cookies, Naomi continued. It does mention that she displayed aggressive body language when questioned. Another click. Security footage from the Mitchell house appeared on screen, showing Layla standing perfectly still with her hands visible, while Voss approached with his weapon drawn. Gasps echoed through the room. Evelyn's supporters looked uncomfortable. That footage was never included in the official file, Naomi said. She moved to Adrian's case next. The pattern repeated. Evelyn's call, Voss's rapid response, missing details in reports that should have cleared innocent people immediately. 17 calls from Mrs. Marrow's phone to police dispatch in 8 months, Naomi said. Every single call resulted in Officer Voss being assigned to respond. Every single call involved black residents or visitors. Coincidence? Evelyn snapped, but her voice carried less confidence. Let's examine the language used in these calls, Naomi said. She clicked to a series of recorded transcripts. Quote, these people are affecting our neighborhood character. Quote, someone needs to protect property values from undesirable elements. Quote, certain individuals make residents feel unsafe. The phrases hung in the air like poison gas. Residents shifted uncomfortably. Some of Evelyn's supporters looked away. Voss stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this character assassination. Sit down, officer, Chief Malcolm Ellison said quietly from beside the door. "You can't order me around in a civilian meeting," Voss shot back. "Actually, I can." Malcolm's voice remained calm. "State investigators are outside this building. You are not free to leave." The room erupted. Some residents gasped. Others started talking at once. Voss's face went white. Captain Pike stepped forward, his chest out, and voice raised. "Chief Ellison, you are abusing your authority for personal revenge. This is exactly why city leadership has concerns about your judgment." Malcolm didn't respond. He simply looked at Naomi. She clicked to the next slide. A computer access log filled the screen, showing timestamps and user identifications for the police department's body cam archive system. "This shows who accessed Officer Voss's body camera footage from my arrest," Naomi said. "The original files were downloaded at 2:47 p.m. on August 12th. The edited version that leaked to media appeared online at 6:33 p.m. the same day." She let that sink in before clicking again. "The access log shows user identification CP4471. That's Captain Russell Pike's login credentials." The room fell absolutely silent. Pike's face drained of color as every eye in the room turned toward him. The heavy door at the back of the community center opened with a deliberate creak. State investigators in dark suits entered quietly, their badges visible but their expressions unreadable. They positioned themselves near the exits without saying a word. Captain Pike's confident posture crumbled as he realized what their presence meant. His eyes darted between the investigators and the screen still displaying his login credentials. "Ladies and gentlemen," Malcolm said, his voice carrying clearly through the suddenly tense room, "Lieutenant Dana Reeves from Internal Affairs will present additional findings." Dana stepped forward, her slim frame carrying the weight of authority. She held a tablet in one hand and a stack of documents in the other. "Captain Pike's computer access represents more than tampering with evidence," Dana began. Her voice was crisp and professional. "It reveals a coordinated effort to target specific residents based on racial profiling." She gestured to Naomi, who clicked to the next slide. Phone records appeared on the screen, showing calls between Pike's office number and Evelyn's home. "These are recorded conversations between Captain Pike and Mrs. Merrow," Dana continued. "The department records all calls to supervisory lines for training purposes." An audio file began playing through the speakers. Pike's voice came through clearly. "Mrs. Merrow, I understand your concerns about neighborhood security. Officer Voss has experience with these situations. I'll make sure he handles your calls personally." Evelyn's voice responded with barely contained excitement. "Oh, that's wonderful. He understands that certain people need closer watching." "Absolutely," Pike agreed. "We maintain files on repeat concerns in your area. Voss knows which individuals require additional attention." The recording stopped. The room sat in stunned silence. "There are 14 similar conversations," Dana said. "Captain Pike created unofficial watch lists of black residents based solely on Mrs. Merrow's complaints. No legal basis, no criminal history, no actual suspicious behavior." Evelyn shot to her feet, her carefully styled hair now disheveled. "Everyone is twisting my words. I never said anything about race. I was protecting property values." "Your private HOA messages tell a different story," Dana replied calmly. She nodded to Naomi again. The screen filled with text messages from a group chat labeled Magnolia Row Quality Control. Evelyn's name appeared as the sender on most messages. Quote, "The postal worker looked like he was casing houses," Dana read. "The girl at the Mitchell place didn't belong there. That inspector was clearly up to something suspicious." All messages sent minutes before calling police. Other HOA board members in the audience began shifting away from Evelyn as their own names appeared in the message thread, some responding with agreement, others with heart emojis. "Wait!" one board member called out, standing quickly. "I thought we were just discussing security concerns. I didn't know you were turning those into police reports." Another member nodded frantically. "I never agreed to target anyone. This isn't what I signed up for." Evelyn's support evaporated as board members realized their casual agreement with her complaints had become evidence in a federal civil rights investigation. Voss finally exploded. This is garbage. You think I invented racism in policing? This is how we've always done things." His face flushed red as he pointed wildly around the room. "Ask anyone who's been on the force more than 5 years. We watch certain neighborhoods closer, because that's what keeps crime down." "Officer Voss," Malcolm said quietly, "you are relieved of duty effective immediately." "You can't do this," Voss shouted. "Pike told me which calls to prioritize. He said the chief wanted us to keep wealthy donors happy." Pike tried to stand and move toward the door, but one of the state investigators stepped smoothly into his path. "Captain Pike," Malcolm continued, his voice never rising but carrying absolute authority, "you are hereby relieved of command pending criminal investigation. Your badge, weapon, and credentials will be surrendered immediately." "This is a witch hunt," Pike snarled, but his hands shook as he reached for his badge. "You're destroying good officers to protect your wife's political agenda." "Actually," Dana interrupted, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law." The lead state investigator approached Pike with handcuffs ready. "Captain Russell Pike, you have the right to remain silent." Across the room, another investigator moved toward Voss. "Officer Garrett Voss, you're under arrest for falsifying police reports and violating civil rights under color of authority." The community center erupted in voices, some shocked, others vindicated. Cameras flashed as reporters captured Pike and Voss being cuffed. Naomi remained at the podium, her hands steady on the lectern as chaos swirled around her. She watched Voss being led through the same crowd that had witnessed her humiliation weeks earlier. This time, the cuffs were on the right person. The morning sun cast long shadows across Magnolia Row as news vans lined both sides of the street. Reporters adjusted their cameras and checked their microphones, preparing for the press conference that would reshape the neighborhood forever. Naomi stood on her front porch, watching the controlled chaos below. 3 different television stations had arrived before dawn. Print journalists interviewed neighbors who had witnessed her arrest weeks earlier. The same sidewalk where Voss had cuffed her now buzzed with activity. Malcolm appeared beside her, adjusting his dress uniform. "The mayor's announcement goes live in 30 minutes, he said quietly. "Are you ready for this?" Naomi nodded, her eyes fixed on the exact spot where Voss had twisted her arms behind her back. "I've been ready since the moment those cuffs clicked shut." Her phone buzzed with messages of support. Community leaders, former military colleagues, and residents from across the city had sent encouragement. The emergency response program that Evelyn's network had tried to destroy was about to become something bigger than Naomi had ever imagined. A black sedan pulled up, and Mayor Patricia Williams stepped out with her chief of staff. She spotted Naomi on the porch and waved before walking toward the cluster of reporters. "Good morning," Mayor Williams began, her voice carrying across the street through portable speakers. "Yesterday's revelations about systematic harassment in Magnolia Row have prompted immediate action from this administration." She held up an official document. "Effective today, we are launching a full independent investigation into discriminatory policing practices citywide. This investigation will be conducted by the State Attorney General's office with federal oversight." Cameras captured every word as neighbors gathered on their porches and sidewalks. "Additionally," the mayor continued, "Dr. Naomi Ellison's Community Emergency Response Program will receive full city funding and expand to all neighborhoods. What began as a grassroots safety initiative will now serve as a model for community police collaboration." Applause erupted from the crowd. Naomi felt her chest tighten with emotion, but she kept her expression steady. "Captain Russell Pike has been suspended without pay pending criminal charges," Mayor Williams announced. "Officer Garrett Voss faces federal civil rights violations. The Department of Justice has confirmed they are reviewing additional cases involving similar patterns of harassment." A reporter called out, "What about the HOA's role in targeting residents?" "Mrs. Evelyn Marrow has been removed from her position as HOA president," the mayor replied. "Multiple families are pursuing civil lawsuits against the discriminatory practices documented in yesterday's evidence. The city will provide legal support for any resident who faced harassment. As the press conference concluded, Harold Benton walked slowly down the sidewalk toward Naomi's house. The retired mail carrier wore his best shirt and carried a small American flag pin in his lapel. "Miss Naomi," he said softly as he reached her porch, "I wanted to thank you for giving me my dignity back." Layla Mercer appeared next, walking with her grandmother. The teenager looked nervous, but determined. "Dr. Ellison, my guidance counselor said what you did will help other kids like me feel safer in their own neighborhoods." Adrian Cole jogged up the street, carrying a folder thick with documents. "Naomi, the city attorney wants copies of all my contract records. They're building cases against every property owner who used false complaints to damage local businesses." More neighbors emerged from their houses. Families who had remained silent during months of harassment now stepped forward. The street filled with people who had watched Naomi's arrest and felt ashamed of their silence. "We're organizing the first Unity Safety Walk," announced Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down, "right here on Magnolia Row. Will you lead it?" Naomi stepped down from her porch, Malcolm walking beside her, not as her protector or rescuer, but as the husband who had watched his wife dismantle a corrupt system with patience, evidence, and unbreakable strength. "Let's walk together," Naomi said simply. The crowd formed naturally around her as she moved toward the sidewalk. Harold took his place on her left, Layla on her right. Adrian walked behind with his folder of evidence that had helped expose the truth. Neighbors who had never spoken before walked side by side. Naomi approached the exact spot where Voss had forced her to the ground. The concrete looked the same, but everything had changed. She did not slow down, did not pause to remember the humiliation. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.